Hello and welcome. You're with us here on Business Today. I'm Abha Bakaya, and with me, the author of True North, Bill George, who's here from the United States to talk about his new book on leadership, what it really means in today's day and age, and how we've really left the baby boomers generation behind us and are looking at something very new altogether. Bill, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Hey, it's a thrill to be here.
So let's dive right in. I mean, you talk a lot about authentic leadership and how it's really important for people to have clarity on their own sense of purpose before going out there into the real world and trying to really find a compatible course or a compatible company. Is that really how the world is looking at leadership and employment today? Because, there is the other side of it, and that is productivity. How are people managing if they are looking for a sense of purpose? How are they really being able to find those opportunities when what a lot of corporations may be looking for from employees is just pure productivity?
Well, we've gone from 30 years of the baby boomers and with command and control leadership, tops down, do it, directing everyone. It's not working today. The millennials don't want to work in that environment. Younger people want to have the chance to show what they can do. They don't want to have to stand in line. And I do believe it's about authenticity. People don't want to work for somebody who's not real. If they can't trust them, if they don't feel like they're really building a relationship, because leadership is all about relationships. So I do think we're going through this area. And by the way, I think when you empower people in a group because you inspire them around a central purpose, a core purpose, yes, I think it's going to be more productive. It's not just turning out widgets or not just coding lines of software. Leadership is about so much more than that. So I'm very inspired by the new leaders coming along who are deeply authentic, and the fact we've made this shift, being real, being genuine. And isn't that who you want to work for?
So one part of it is shaping company culture, of course, but the other part of it is also really having that time with employees. And many large corporations don't have that. So how does it filter down? Even if, let's say, you're authentic, you do have an intent that's clear, how do you manage to really drive that sense of purpose all the way down to the bottom and all the way down to the front line of your employees that are facing your customers and the outside world?
You got to be there with your people. Just this past week, we were doing a seminar at Harvard Business School that I was leading for large company CEOs. And discussion time management came up. And my colleague, Indra Nooyi, who was our dean, did a study and found that 68% of time is spent in meetings and 5% working with employees. This is wrong. We got it backwards. We need to be out on the production line, understanding what's going on. They're the ones that know, not the quality department. The engineers, the people who are innovating, the people on the front lines, in a hotel like we're in a retail store and an airline, you name it. My son, who's a doctor, it's all about compassion for his patients. And so I think we've lost sight of that. And frankly, compensation-wise, we have too. We created this great income inequality by all the money flowing to the top and paying, the minimal to people doing the work. It should be the other way around. We should be really there supporting the people doing the work and paying them for it.
So there is a concept, of course, that we're increasingly seeing, especially with the new age companies, of having your employees as stakeholders, having that sense of ownership. But then they're also facing issues, with a lack of commitment, people leaving too soon, not really being vested. I'm just playing devil's advocate here because, while there's so much talk about the nature of work changing, and it clearly is. I don't think there's any hiding from that. There are some challenges in reaching a new normal.
Well, there are huge challenges, but let's talk why are people quitting? Why do we have what we call the Great Resignation? In the United States, we have 11 million unfilled jobs and only 5 million unemployed people. And a lot of those aren't qualified to take the unfilled job. Why are they leaving? They're leaving because there's no sense of purpose. They're leaving, they don't just want to work for a paycheck or work for earnings per share for the corporation. They want to work for some purpose and meaning, and the organizations that are giving them that are going to thrive. And those that lose sight of it, like Starbucks has kind of lost sight of the fact that they were the employee-oriented company, and they kind of lost, now they're trying to get it back. But I think companies really have to focus on that. Otherwise, it'll be like General Electric and go out of business.
So give me some more examples, Bill, because you've been, analyzing so many of these case studies, speaking to leaders around the world and big corporates. Share with us a little bit more of what you feel is working versus what's not working.
I grew up in the state of Michigan, And General Motors is a company I love to hate because they had all these people from the treasurer's office running GM for 50 years, about 10 CEOs coming through. Mary Barra comes in. She started there as an 18-year-old co-op student. She's worked there 41 years. She understands the front line. She's out with them all the time. She was a frontline employee. She had 4 frontline jobs before she went into management. And she has a sense, she's now realized she's got to change this moribund culture to be a consumer, customer-oriented culture where design and quality matter, not just earnings per share. So she's an example. Another company that frankly was going right down the drain, and that was Microsoft under Steve Ballmer. Satya Nadella takes over. He brings the idea of empathy, that we have to be not know-it-alls, but learn-it-alls. We have to have compassion for the people we're serving and availability. He's out there with his people all the time. He's an amazing leader. And I think he's as good as any, maybe the best leader in the business world today, because he has a real sense of his people and real compassion. Now, it comes out of his personal life when he had a son who had cerebral palsy, but good for him. You know, he's not just a computer engineer.
No, absolutely. He definitely has a more holistic character that shines through. And a more nuanced role. But tell us, in terms of what qualities you feel a leader should encompass. Empathy, of course, has been much talked about, particularly post-COVID. But what else do you feel is important for a leader to display today in terms of strengths?
On the very broad brush, 50, 75 years, 100 years ago, we were all about working with your hands. Then we went, starting in the 1970s, to working with your head. Basically, it was all about numbers, computer skills. All this came on and it became the dominant. Today, it's about leading with your heart. You have to be smart, but frankly, I've never seen a leader fail because they weren't smart enough. They fail because they don't have emotional intelligence. They fail because they can't lead with their heart. And by that, I mean, do you have passion for the work you're doing? Do you have compassion for the people you're serving? Are you a servant leader? Do you have compassion? Do you have empathy for your employees? And do you have courage? Courage. These are all matters of the heart. You're not born with these. You learn these things through dint of hard experience, through difficult times as well as good times.
So what you're saying is that EQ has now become a lot more important.
EQ is essential.
It's essential.
Dan Goldman, I'm actually here in India with. We're going up to Dharamsala to meet with His Holiness the Dalai Lama when I leave here. And yeah, he's the father of that, but he brought these ideas. They're absolutely right. Today, if you don't have emotional intelligence, you can't be an effective leader.
So is there a way to inculcate some of that as a leader? Because there was a time when you had to have your MBA, you had to go to business school or, do a variety of things to be perceived as someone capable enough to run a large organization. Today, do you go to someone and say that I've done an EQ course? How do you really go about inculcating these?
Well, I wish business schools were teaching more about leadership. We're training millions of managers, but are we really helping people become better leaders? Now, you can't teach them leadership by, here are the 5 principles of leading. You actually have to, but you can help people develop themselves, know who they are. To be a great leader, you've got to know yourself. The hardest person you'll ever lead is yourself, and you've got to learn that. And in all my courses at Harvard that we created, I was part of creating them, we're all focusing on leadership, because that's our mission. Now, there are lots of other courses that focus on process control and accounting and everything else. I'm not saying those things are unimportant, but we must start developing leaders. They don't have to go to university. They don't have to get MBAs. We can do it right in the workplace. We can do it in the home. But I think we need to develop people. But you only develop it, I think, by rubbing up against the world in challenging experiences. You don't get it sitting in a classroom.
So what are the kind of experiences you feel one could really dive into today? Because during COVID, a lot was impacted. Everyone went online. And managers today have had a hard time convincing employees to come back to the office. Some companies are now insisting on it. Some are sticking to a 3-day week, 4-day week. What do you see the future of work looking like?
That's a hot topic right now. I think it'll be some kind of hybrid environment. I believe in workplace flexibility. If my daughter-in-law needs to go to our son's parent-teacher evaluation, she should, or my son, they should be allowed to go. They can't just work 9 to 5. It's not going to work. But I do think there's real benefits of being together. The chance that we're talking right now. How does collaboration come about? Where does innovation come from? I learned much more at Medtronic, kind of wandering around the halls, going to the factories, talking to people in engineering, going to medical center, than I ever did sitting in meetings. So I think we spend too much time in meetings. We're not managing numbers and not getting out with the people, where that's what makes the difference.
So, what are some of the qualities that you're observing in new age leaders? There's so many of these tech companies, leaders like Elon Musk, which are, who are no way old school. They're really redefining leadership as such in an altogether, unique way. What are some of the qualities you're observing in leaders of this new generation, or the ones that are still coming into play? Are they different in many ways, apart from, of course, displaying more qualities such as empathy and emotional, EQ, like you described, but are they aspiring for something different? What is their version of success? Are they looking to really enjoy perhaps their success in different ways? What are some of the things that you've spotted?
I was going to give you a clear yes to your question until you mentioned Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Because Elon Musk is the greatest inventor of our era. I'm not sure he's a great leader.
Sure.
In fact, a lot of things he does would not qualify. Mark Zuckerberg created social media. I'm not sure he's a great leader.
Okay, so why is that? Let's talk about why you shouldn't be like them first.
Yeah, let's let the leaders that I admire, people like Corey Berry at Best Buy. Here's a woman that got the job at 45 years old. 44, and doing a fantastic job adapting to COVID and being very human with their people and motivating people and totally transform that enterprise. And that's the kind of leader that I think we need. And there are many leaders like this coming along. And I think a number of the more progressive baby boomers are like that, like a Mary Barra or Satya Nadella. But my point is, they lead with their heart as well as their head.
Sure.
And they know they can't get it done unless they inspire people. They're out with their people all the time. They're not sitting in their office. And that's the big change that's got to take place.
And so Elon Musk is not a good leader because...
Well, no, he's a great inventor.
Yes.
But
we all know he's eccentric.
I don't want to hold him up
yeah.
as a role model, or Steve Jobs a role model as a leadership. Okay. Because you're a great inventor he's done an amazing job with Tesla. I mean, he's a great... I wish he'd forget about Twitter and go back to focusing on inventing things. He probably could create 10 more companies.
Sure. Okay. So who would be a leader that, you mentioned Satya Nadella. Who else can we think of? Anyone you've met here in India that you feel, was someone that you think is a good leader or that people admire?
Oh, sure, but they're of the older generation. People like Ratan Tata is amazing. I've known Ratan for four decades and negotiated a joint venture with him at Honeywell. He's an amazing humanist. So when you have the attack on the Taj, he's out there. He's had people that really are committed to that organization. I see that here at the Oberoi. Another person that, again, is very senior, but did an amazing job, and you see it in the United States, is Narayan Murthy, who founded Infosys. And it's all about values, and he inculcated those from the start, and those have never faded in either one of those organizations. So I give them enormous credit.
He talks about it even today. He was recently with us at one of our conclaves, and he talks about it even today in terms of what he'd like to see from entrepreneurs and the kind of dedication that's required. But, here in India, we're seeing one of the largest VC-driven markets. The tech, ecosystem is booming. We've got more than 100 unicorns. And they're all really up against time because they're trying to deliver to their investors. Do you really feel in that kind of environment, and if that's what we're calling the new age companies or the sunrise sectors, of course, energy and other sectors as well, but for the new age tech companies, that there could be any other priority other than just delivering to investors? A lot of them talk about purpose, of course, but they're delivering on tech platforms and growth and scale and AI and innovation in that sense, like you were describing. I'm not sure how much of that time is going into culture.
Well, if you like, let's take Travis Kalanick, who created Uber. Fantastic invention, great innovation, but he never learned how to lead. And he led in great difficulty, and Dara is now improving the company. But Travis created a terrible environment. But you've got something like Aditya Mittal, who has taken over ArcelorMittal now, and I just spent the last 3 days, and he's a fantastic leader, amazing, 45 years old, 46, really doing a great job. I don't know as many of the younger leaders in India. You know why? Because they're all coming, a lot of them are coming to the UX. Laxman Narasimhan has taken over Starbucks, Howard Schultz's company. Yes. And I think Laxman I've known for a long time. And I think he at PepsiCo, at Reckitt, and now, of course, at Starbucks. I think he'll do a fantastic job. There are a lot of leaders like this emerging. I just happen to get to know the ones in the U.S. better.
Of course.
But I think the qualities that people are raised with here in India are really positive. I can't speak to all these unicorns, but I can
Sure.
say the culture in which you come, and I see this in Indian Americans, they never lose their culture. You go into their homes. Omar Ishrak, who turned around Medtronic, fantastic leader. But you go into his home, he's Muslim. He went to Mecca and did the Hajj. He practices Ramadan. You know, I'm just saying he's very devout, very Indian. He's not given up his culture.
Sure.
Some people abandon their cultures, and then they're lost.
Okay. So what about themes like diversity, inclusion? Some companies have been talking about things like progressive policies such as, period leave and, having both maternal, paternal leave. That's, of course, amazing. But do you feel that to some extent, some of these policies are still just lip service? How deep does really the diversity and inclusion agenda go?
I think in a lot of companies it's too superficial. It's a statistical thing. We report our diversity statistic. I say you have to have diverse organizations. Otherwise, you can't make good decisions if you don't have diverse people around the table. But it's not a statistical thing. It's, do you feel fully included? I remember I got upset with Goldman Sachs. Now it's been turned around by David Solomon. But, never had any women in top executive roles other than staff roles, not in line roles. I think that you have to create an inclusive environment where everyone feels a sense of belonging, regardless of their gender, race, religion, national origin, sexual identity. You really want to feel you can't perform at your best unless you feel fully included. And so I think there is some window dressing out there. That's got to stop, and we got to focus on how do we make everyone fully. My whole goal is to enable people to reach their full potential. That's why I wrote the book, is can we create environments where people can reach their full potential because they're fully accepted and they can be who they are.
I just feel like in today's day and age when everyone's a lot more materialistic, shifting to the authentic self, it may come more naturally to some of the younger generation, as you described, that are looking for purpose. But I'm not sure there's a playing field that's ready for them. That's really why I'm asking you this question again and again, because I'm not sure everyone truly understands how to be their authentic self at work.
Well, you can be your authentic self if you have a leadership team that's insisting you be your authentic self. Many of the positive companies I've mentioned have that environment. But that's why we need to shift from the old school leaders who are all about productivity and the bottom line to new leaders who are much more progressive. You mentioned parental leave. I mean, why shouldn't I as a male get leave just like my spouse? Why not?
So what did you think about the Danish, Prime Minister and how she got called out for partying? But she's announced.
Why shouldn't she party? Yeah. I had a woman tell me the other day, she's running Canadian National Railway. She says, I like to drive Harleys. She said, I'm moving to Montreal. Can I still drive my? I said, of course, that's who you are. I don't ride to drive a Harley, but be who you are. And if you're not who you are, people today, the millennials will see right through you and they don't want to work for you. And so that's what's happening. That's why a lot of people are quitting, because they feel like people are being phonies. If you don't build trust as a leader, you'll never have a successful organization.
No, this is fascinating. How quickly do you see things changing? I mean, you're obviously observing it. There's a need for it. You're seeing leaders demonstrate this. But how quickly do you see this becoming a norm?
Well, in part, I wrote my book because I want to go through this generational change. I think we have to get through it.
Right.
We're still stuck in the old command and control mode. And we still tolerate a lot of jerks in the workplace. Let's be very honest. It creates a toxic environment. And then they lose really good people. And people won't tolerate that. So I think the faster we can go to turn it over in the next 5 years or so, 5, 10 max, we just got to get it done. Because people are COVID had a huge psychological impact on people. People say, is this what I want for my life? Mm-hmm. And they aren't going to work there. And you're going to find the organizations where everyone is quitting because there's no purpose are going to fail. And so that's why we need to go through these changes.
Does purpose have to be one that's associated with a better world, a better climate, some kind of social impact? Purpose could be defined in so many ways. What if it's individual purpose?
Individual purpose, but it should be aligned with company purpose. Why would you devote the bulk of your time, your waking hours to a job if you didn't care about it? Mm-hmm. So I think it will be. And the companies that know how to link individual purpose, and so that's what we tried to do at Medtronic, to inspire people around restoring people to full life and health. But I know bankers that are just doing a fantastic job of helping secure people's financial futures. And they did this during COVID, trying to reach out to people that were hurting. So yeah, so it's not just in the healthcare field. It can be in the tech field. Are you making products that really help people? Or are you making a product like Facebook, which is causing a lot of harm right now? You got to realize, the rule of medicine, do no harm. Well, that should apply to tech too.
Right. Do you feel there will be any kind of pushback on tech companies, given some of this damage?
I think, honestly, we're going to have to regulate tech companies, certainly in the matter of privacy. The fact that they take and sell your information, your healthcare information, this is terrible. Tim Cook of Apple says healthcare is a human right. Apple has infinite amount of material, but they don't access it. And I think, yes, there should be some form. We have to have regulated in healthcare. I think they have to have, energy companies are regulated. Don't we have to have some form so that there's some boundary conditions. I'm not trying to constrain their growth, but I think there ought to be some boundary condition in which they grow, so they're not taking advantage of people and selling their information like it was a commodity.
How do you think this will affect world leaders? It's a very interesting time that we're going through. And, we are seeing political leaders that people have referred to as dictators. We're seeing political leaders that have started wars. We've seen, very extreme pulls and pushes in the global environment right now. So how do you think this applies to global leaders?
Well, I'm very, I haven't studied global leaders. I've known a lot of them. I'm very discouraged about a lot of leadership that's popping up and nationalistic leaders that are all out for themselves. And so I worry about that a lot. In fact, one of the things I'm trying to do through my work is to get the business community to be a backstop against that and say, okay, the Supreme Court can throw out abortion cases, but we're going to do the right thing by our people. We're 60% women. I've had a lot of CEOs tell me this. We're going to do the right thing by our people. And I don't care if you want to overturn the Marriage Equality Act. If you do it, we're still going to provide the capability in our company. So I think business has an incredibly powerful role to play, not in lobbying and spending money, but in having an impact on people, providing the jobs, providing good jobs. And one of my pet peeves right now is that we've diminished the work, people doing the work, and I think we need to upgrade and pay people who are really making a difference doing the work. The frontline people I'm talking about.
Frontline people. Okay, so and in terms of the breakup of the kind of companies that you see growing or having, more of an influence, the kind of sectors that you see taking prominence going forward, what would you identify them as?
Well, what those sectors are?
Yeah.
Well, the tech sector is going to have a huge positive impact, but let's make sure it's positive.
Right.
And maybe I'm not going to say Apple's too big or Microsoft's too big, but let's make sure it has leaders that are having a positive impact. For instance, Facebook. I think it's time for a professional CEO. We have professional CEOs at the other tech companies, and Mark Zuckerberg can focus on the metaverse, and the new CEO can come in and face about getting Facebook on track, because otherwise it's going to go away. I mean, it's lost 60% of its market value this year, so you wouldn't want to be an investor in that.
We've had some Indian leaders that have made it to the global rich list, as you know, Mukesh Ambani, Gautam Adani. I know you haven't had a chance to meet too many of the leaders here. You are on this trip, and you probably will have other experiences post that. But any thoughts there from what you've read about them or seen about them so far?
Well, it's very interesting to me. I've known Mukesh Ambani. I know many of the Indian leaders. I admire the ones who are very values-centered and focus on their values. And that's what we see in a lot of the Indian American leaders I see, which are rising to such prominence. We have 30 companies in America and Great Britain that are run by major companies run by Indians. Why is this the case? It's because I think they're very authentic, down-to-earth leaders. Most of them, frankly, come from middle-class backgrounds. They're not the wealthy people. They come from a middle-class background, and they're well-educated, but they also know that they only can do as well as their authenticity and their hard work will take them. So I'd like to see more Indian leaders fall into that category as well.
And I like what you said about hard work, because I think in all the talk about purpose and inclusivity, sometimes millennials forget that they do also need to work.
No, it's a lot of work. But if you're passionate about some, work is easy.
Then it feels like
I have a colleague that says, it quotes Khalil Gibran, work is love made visible. So if you really feel like I'm working to help you restore your health, I'm really working to help you get that home you wanted to have through a mortgage, or I'm helping you have those products that can make your life easier. Yes, I feel through a social media site like LinkedIn, I feel connected with people all over the world I never even knew before. So yeah, I think they make a big difference. Tech makes a big difference. I'm very positive about it. We just have to make sure there are boundaries around it.
All right. Bill, thank you so much for your time. It was great chatting with you here on Business Today. Hope you have a great trip, and we look forward to reading the rest of the book.
Thank you. It's been a privilege to be with you.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.